everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And today we're going to talk about the oh-so-riveting topic of censorship and ratings, Dan.
Yeah, censorship, one of the worst things of all time.
Oh man, well, we know how Dan stands on this, and I really basically agree, so we're done. This is something of a follow-up to a video that Vince and I did a long time ago, probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and maybe more like 3 or 4 years ago at this point, Dan, where we discussed mostly the idea of self-censorship versus imposed censorship, and when you should handle it yourself, and whether or not stuff should be regulated. And we don't do a lot of really political stuff on here on Geekvolution generally, but this is a topic where some of that has to come up a little bit to a certain degree, I think, and it is an important thing to consider because, of course, it affects our culture real hard. It affects our art. It tells us what we are and aren't allowed to put out to the public, and generally speaking, I think that that's a thing that should be handled in-house, and that nobody should really be able to tell you what is okay to go in a thing. But I do think that companies should have a responsibility, just because they should care about people, and they should care about the way that they're influencing the culture, because they are, talking about the creators of things, but also the studios and networks. They should communicate what the thing is, So let's go ahead and start with the Deadpool thing, because that's what me, Dan, and I think about talking about this anyway in the first place. And there had been talk for a while in the geeky community about how there needs to be a PG-13 version of Deadpool because a lot of kids want to go see that movie. And Dan and I both were vehemently against that idea. And Dan,
Yeah.
how do you think, as the studio and the people making Deadpool, how do you handle the fact that it's a superhero and the culture generally regards superhero stuff as okay for children and kids want to go see it, but it is decisively not for them? How do you handle that?
Well, I think Fox did the best job possible. The marketing team responded in the best. I can't say what the marketing team responded to the people requesting a PG-13 version, because it's really vulgar. But basically, they tweeted at them and told them that, you're wrong for requesting a PG-13 version. That's not what Deadpool is. And, I'm not even a Deadpool fan at all, really. I don't really like the character, but if you're going to make a Deadpool movie, that's kind of what it needs to be anything like the source material and what people like about him in the first place. So, I think what they ended up making for what that character is was fantastic. And to censor that, I think, would have been a disservice to the character, and I think it would have been a movie that was panned instead of like this one is, where, everybody seems to like it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how much money it's made and breaking records and proving that sometimes you just take a thing off the page that people like already and give it to them in this medium that just makes more money than comic books, and that more people are gonna go out and consume.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, and this is a different topic, of course. It's unfortunate how movies legitimize things, and that medium is considered, more important and makes a thing more real to people than having it in its original source material or wherever else you might put it. But if it hadn't been handled that way, it wouldn't be doing as well as it's doing, and it's proving to people that it's not the R rating, it's the fact that it was allowed to be what it is, and that requires an R rating to communicate to people what it is, and to not let children that aren't with their parents go into the movie theater to see a thing like that. That's really inappropriate for them.
Yeah, exactly. When I went to see Deadpool, I thought it was kind of strange that there were a lot of kids in my screening. There were 6-year-old kids in there and stuff. And I can't even imagine the talks that fathers had to have with these kids afterwards. That was kind of going through my mind the entire time the movie was playing. I was like, this was a large mistake. I'm surprised none of them left. But anyway,
yeah.
I thought it was very clear from the marketing of that movie as to what kind of movie it was. It had red band trailers. If you were a parent and you did any sort of research as to what the movie you were bringing to your kid, you were thinking about bringing your kid to was, I mean, you kind of know that based on the marketing. I think Fox did everything they could to communicate that, to parents, look, I mean, this is an R-rated superhero movie. If you go to the theater and you see the rating and it says R, that should be a clue enough for you. That's why we have the rating system in the first place. But it's also weird, we talked about this a little bit, that Marvel markets Deadpool to children in like animated TV shows and stuff that are for kids. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you can't blame the kids for wanting to see the movie, because if Deadpool's their favorite character from like his appearances in Ultimate Spider-Man and whatever other shows he's in, a movie comes out of him, of course they're going to want to see it, right? Like I can only imagine being a kid that age and, seeing a Spider-Man movie come out for the first time and, being like, oh, I mean, I can't go see the Spider-Man movie that just came out. I mean, that'd be really disappointing. And it would be disappointing for the parents to take their kids to see that either, I guess, right?
You have certain characters that are borderline. We're talking a lot right now about whether or not Batman or Superman, especially Superman, but whether or not Batman and Superman should ever be rated R, because they have stories that if you adapted them the way they were on the page, they would be rated R. And now we know that we're going to have a now we know that we're going to have a rated R director's cut from Snyder of Batman vs. Superman. So, like, this is happening. The precedent for this is being set now. Not in the theater, but, like, just have anything, live action, Batman, especially with Superman in it, rated R. This is absolutely mind-blowing to me. So you have these borderline characters, and I'm not saying Superman is one of those, with somebody like Batman, where I can see why people would say, I'd love to see a rated R Batman movie, because there are certain stories that you would almost need that rating in order to tell, or that you would definitely have to. If you were to directly do Dark Knight Returns, or Killing Joke, or any number of things, even Long Halloween, I would say would be maybe difficult to do with even PG-13, although you could probably get away with PG-13 with that. But there's a lot of stories like that. But Deadpool is clearly an adult character. Punisher is clearly an adult character. Spawn is an adult character. It is irresponsible, and I don't think that's too strong of a word, to market characters like that to children. Especially knowing that you might eventually have a movie that they're going to want to see, and I mean, like, I guess Marvel wouldn't have had any reason to suspect that Deadpool would ever get his own movie, and so they may not have had that forethought, and it might be retroactively unfair of me to criticize them for that because of what might happen in the future. But what is Deadpool? He's a mercenary. Like you may not make him all foul-mouthed and stuff, but to make that guy like a hero people want to get behind, like having a villain like Slade Wilson in a cartoon show, I think is different than having Deadpool as a fun-loving character that kids are watching on a cartoon show.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I don't know if Deadpool is an adult character as much as he's like the edgy teenager kind of character. Like, that seems to be the main demographic that he was created to cater towards. I mean, he's got the kind of juvenile humor. I don't know how to say what kind of jokes they were mostly in the movie without being vulgar, but you know what I'm talking about.
But, well, vulgar and sexual jokes, yes, sure.
Yeah.
And the stuff you see in a lot of really raunchy comedies.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the demographic they're appealing to, and I guess, when you're a kid, I mean, you probably had this with Spawn, where it was kind of like the dangerous thing that you're not supposed to be reading, and that's why it's kind of cool.
That's right.
And that's why it's appealing to people. So I can kind of see both sides of it.
Me too, but let it be that, and let parents decide, and don't in other media market it to kids and then confuse them like it's supposed to be
Yeah,
you know,
sure,
a character that's okay just because it's a superhero. Because when people were saying that there should be a PG-13 version because kids are going to want to see it, I think that's some of what they were reacting to, is that you know, kids have gotten to consume this character in other things. They're confused and the parents are confused because they've seen it. They're familiar with it, but they're not familiar with it. They don't know what it is. They've just seen what it looks like. It looks like another guy in a costume. I mean, parents that aren't following the superheroes and didn't keep up with that stuff growing up, like, what do they know one from another, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you gotta look at it from the layman's perspective and outside of the comic book fans' perspective. Some of these parents take their kids to the movies and they don't pay attention to them.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not anyone's fault other than the parents. I mean,
No.
they have to take personal responsibility, of course.
No, I agree with you, but it's also easy to manipulate them if you wanted to, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, sure, if they're, you know, willing to not do any research, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I think the general trend towards making superheroes more for adults is interesting. I mean, I remember Alan Moore a while ago, like a few years ago, he was talking about this general trend that he thought was indicative of a rotting culture. I don't necessarily agree with him, but his basic point was saying that, like, taking these characters that were designed to entertain children and perverting them and making them all dark and gritty was a really strange and perverse idea, and he thought that people need to grow up. And
it's also weird coming from him because he was so a part of that of that phenomenon. Like I always thought it was so weird that he of all people said that, because when you think of dark and gritty adult and like perverting superhero, the first name that comes to mind is Alan Moore.
Yeah, I guess his argument that was like, just because he did that once doesn't mean everything after it has to be like that.
That's true, but I would argue that he did it more than once.
Yeah, sure. But, like, I'm just saying, like, one author does it, interpretation of it that way. Like, you don't necessarily have to apply that across the board to every single theme.
And I don't disagree with him. I think that there were a lot of gratuitous things in the 90s that were just violence and shock factor for the sake of it, trying to buck off his trend. He's not wrong about that, but but when it's thoughtfully done, and when you're you're just telling a really good adult story and it's clearly for adults, I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem either. But I just think it's a general interesting trend that he identified that a few years ago that is kind of, I mean, the trend is clearly there. I think he was wrong in his interpretation, but I think he was right about the trend in which, you know, these characters are increasingly being perceived as characters not just to entertain children. Like the demographic of the movies that they used to make, it was supposed to be, you know, for a broad audience. That's why Daredevil was cut up so it wouldn't be rated R. But now we're kind of okay with doing these things. I mean, you know, Daredevil has his own TV show on Netflix, which is basically a rated R movie that's like, you know, 12, 13 hours long. You know, you got Deadpool, and now we're going to get Wolverine, who is like the, you know, most popular X-Men character among kids. He's going to get a rated R movie.
Then I start feeling like a hypocrite, you see. Then I start thinking, I don't know what's right or wrong to do with these characters, because Wolverine is a killer, and he was created to be this ultra super killing machine, and I guess having him in kids things and, you know, in the Fox the animated cartoon and things like that it feels like a little less wrong and less deceptive, because he's a character that has a different morality than some people, but he tries to do the right thing. He doesn't want to be the animal and all that. So he, at least, I can see a kid looking up to him the way he is, especially once you get to like Jason Aaron's Wolverine that he runs the school and stuff. Right. Like I can see kids looking up to that character past a certain point when he's not impaling people willy-nilly and not thinking about it, over Deadpool.
Yeah, exactly.
But then I also can't help but wonder if...
I mean, X-Men Origins Wolverine had a lot of problems other than the fact that it wasn't rated R, but I feel like that movie might have been a lot better if they had approached it with that lens, because they clearly hired Gavin Hood to make a more like that's a guy that does a little bit more personal or films, or at least that was what was on his resume before that. He was doing films that weren't big action blockbusters. Wolverine blowing up a helicopter and walking at the camera away from it, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I feel like this is a long time coming, especially for this character, and it suits him. I mean, there are countless stories of Wolverine in the comics where he is, like, in Weapon X is one of them, where he's just a mindless killing machine that's impaling people. I mean, his powers in and of themselves are kind of gruesome looking. Yeah. So it kind of is conducive to that rating, and I think it's a really good thing to do that kind of stuff with the character.
Well, me too, because
it's just tough at this point because Wolverine has been a favorite of children even in the movies at this point too.
Yeah, but again, you hope that Fox just markets it right and makes it really clear what it is. And frankly, I wouldn't want a lot of little kids to go to the Wolverine either. Plus, they'd be bored out of their skulls.
Yeah, potentially.
I mean, I really like that movie, but it's a very talky movie. It's kind of thinking and about some stuff. But yeah, I mean, like what you hope and what I expect, because Fox has had a great track record lately with the X-Men movies, that will be done with that, is that it won't be rated R, so oh yay, now we get to make it like really thoughtlessly violent and all about the savagery. If it's about the savagery, it'll be about this, as in exploring it as a theme and a character thing, and like that allows you your hands aren't tied behind your back anymore, and you can actually tell the story you want to tell and make it character driven instead of the focal point of it. Your priority being, okay, how do we sort of tell the story we want to, but tone it down enough that kids can go to it? And then you end up, oftentimes, with a watered-down mess, and that's what Origins ended up being. Now, I still think that the rating with that was maybe 12% of the problem. I mean, there's a lot of just like really stupid logic and hand-holding the audience, and there's some least common denominator nonsense that happens in plenty of rated R movies also. It's not just about that.
I was just saying that if the project was allowed to be more similar to what the source material was, then they might have started not having those problems because they didn't have to try to make it appeal to a general audience.
Yeah, and more importantly, somebody's vision. It's not even about source material as much as it is somebody has an idea of a thing they want to make, and we're prioritizing creating that more than we're prioritizing what's our demographic. You make it for the audience that wants to see that, i.e. the person making it with other people that are like that person. I say that all the time because that's how you that's how you make good stories and good art.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder. Obviously, since Deadpool made so much money, I would assume Wolverine is gonna do gangbusters as well, because it's Wolverine, and this is kind of the movie that everyone has wanted from that character from the beginning. Wolverine that can just
myself included. Crazy. And I feel the need to stop things and say that this is not me saying that everything needs to be okay for children, and that because people like Deadpool or Wolverine, we need dumbed down. Absolutely not. But we need to make it really clear to people what it is. Dan, where I think a lot of this problem came from in the first place? I think you can, with comics and superheroes specifically, I think you can trace it all the way back to Wortham. I think you can trace it all the way back to the Comics Code, because if we didn't have that, if we didn't have this notion that, kids are going to get their hands on it no matter what it says on the cover, so we have to make sure certain things are not in comic books. You're talking this broad medium, just comic books. We can't have adult comics when we have a comics code. You just, if the people making it feel the need to have the code, that it's got to go through the code or they won't sell enough. So suddenly, things that aren't for children have a thing on them that say that they are. I mean, like, you're talking about, in the late 70s, early 80s, you're talking Frank Miller's Daredevil and stuff like that around a time when we had Comics Code. So we've got gritty comics that are that we're being told we have to make sure certain things don't go in them so that they're okay for kids. if we hadn't had that, if we had a separation, and I'm not saying that because, of course, you know me, Dan, I love having things that appeal to both and that are for adults or for kids, but adults can enjoy them also and speak just slightly over kids' heads. You need that stuff, but also should be a separation. Here's stuff that it says mature on it, that says this is not for children at all. And when we blurred those lines, we were basically saying that superheroes are always for kids even when they're not. And so we created this culture, and we're feeling the effects of it in the movies now. I mean, I think that's the root of it. That's the start of it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I think the fact that superheroes are such a big part of marketing toys and to children when they're very young and growing up as a kid in American culture, like superheroes are everywhere. Merchandise, there's a superhero everything that you can buy. You know, you can basically get Batman's face on everything. Anything you would possibly want.
It's it's hipster now. Or you can be you can wear. Who was it? Somebody the other day told me about this. That they talked to somebody that was wearing Batman stuff who had never seen Batman anything and didn't even hardly know that they were wearing Batman things. It's just that it's so popular now. That's so trendy now that it's got a bat on it. You're supposed to wear it because that's what's in right now. And that is mind blowing. It's fascinating. So yeah, it's permeated.
This trend happened when I was a kid.
Oh, I know. I feel the same way. Well, and I had it longer than you did, sir.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, I don't the fact that this goes back to the point we were making before about marketing. I mean, it's such a big part of being a child in American culture that I think the perception is just that, like, the brand is consistent across the board.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people make that assumption, and I think Disney has done a really good job with the Marvel cinematic movies and making those really good stories. Like Captain America Winter Soldier is a really accessible movie that you can take kids to, but if you're an adult, there's also a really good story about things that adults need to think about there too. And
that are kind of okay for kids to be thinking about too. I mean, they're not going to get it yet.
But even if they don't pick up on them, they go and see the enjoyable action movie if they're like 4 years old, and they have a great time as well. You know?
That's what's great about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of, and since those are the most successful of the superhero brand right now, I think that's just what people assume, that there's a brand consistency around everything, especially with the Fox Marvel characters, because you got the Marvel logo before all the movies, so a lot of people assume they're made by the same studio.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, I mean,
and that's an understandable ignorance.
What's that, sorry?
I said that's an understandable ignorance. The only reason they don't know is because they're not comic book people.
Right, exactly. And I mean, we've sort of complained about Disney removing X-Men and Fantastic Four things from their merchandise, but like at the same time, they're removing the X-Men characters from the merchandise, and maybe they're trying to not market Deadpool to kids, at least in toy form, and I don't know.
Yeah, but that's clearly not the motive there, because they're also not doing Fantastic Four stuff.
Well, yeah, and their Fantastic Four franchise was trying to be more, much more dark than Fantastic Four usually is. So
that's true. Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you. I think there's other motives there, but that could be potentially part of it. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I years ago, I think about this stuff so differently now because of how it's changed the culture. Years ago, when I first started in Superhero Rewind, I used to say a lot. I used to call superhero a subgenre a lot of whatever the genre was that the movie was. That's flipped now. Superhero is an umbrella, and it always was, but in the movies now, it is taken that legacy and move forward with it, where the superhero is now just and comic book is now just this overarching umbrella that anything under the sun can go under, and that means that you're going to have stuff that's not for kids. And that means you're going to have stuff that's really kiddie and adults aren't going to like or get. Also, I mean, you're going to have both sides of it, and you probably should have that, and it's a wonderful problem to have in a way. But the problem is the culture that we live in. There are a lot of parents that I'm sorry, just don't do their jobs, and they're gonna. Yeah, I don't want to get too far into this, but I mean, like, they're gonna sit their kids in front of the TV, or send them to the movie theater with their friends, or whatever, and or how many kids do you think played the Deadpool video game?
Probably quite a lot.
Yeah, and that's not good. That's potentially detrimental. I mean, like, different kids can handle different things. But I'd argue that if the parent doesn't even know what it is their kid's looking, there's no guidance. There's no discussion about what it is that you're looking at. And I know this is a thing that doesn't bother some of our viewers, and that people get really irritated with me for talking about it and being as passionate as I am about it. I'm sorry, it matters to me. And I'm a parent, and that's part of it. But it's always been a thing that really matters to me. The guidance in parenting, what exactly you're telling your kid is a good role model, is a hero, is something to be looked up to, is important. And we're calling them superheroes even when they're not. Anti-heroes, still superheroes. To people, it's all part of that umbrella. We just have to be more responsible about it. It's not a matter of censorship. It's a matter of communication.
Yeah, and a matter of just letting whatever you're making speak for itself, I suppose. I think the Fox X-Men franchise has, since relatively recently, this even happened before Days of Future Past, maybe starting with First Class, when that was kind of the beginning of the soft reboot. They've kind of just let whatever the story they're making kind of speak for itself. Like the X-Men movies have always been a little bit darker than what Disney is doing, because the X-Men in the Marvel comics were always a little bit darker than, like, the Avengers, for example. The Avengers are the big, shiny, team that goes and, saves the world, and the X-Men are like a band of freaks that are, the people that are hated in society, and everyone fears them and things like that. So I think they've done a pretty good job of doing that. Like, the X-Men stuff isn't as heavily marketed as the Marvel stuff is, I've noticed. And it still does pretty well at the box office, but it's not a big, like, all ages cultural event usually when one of those movies comes out. I was kind of surprised it was that way with Deadpool, to be honest with you.
Well, I think, and that's all Ryan Reynolds. I mean, that's just a matter of, he has such a passion for that character, and they let him run with it and do whatever he wanted to with it, which I think is wonderful. Both with the movie and with the way it was marketed. I mean, he worked directly with the marketing team, and I saw an interview where he said that, like, they'd call each other up in the middle of the night and with ideas and stuff. The problem is, and I'm not blaming Ryan Reynolds for this or saying that he's irresponsible. The problem is, it was in front of everybody. It was in everybody's face, and you couldn't walk 3 feet without seeing something. I mean, in a way, it shouldn't surprise us how well it's doing, because it's the only thing we saw for, like, we saw that shade of red for, like, 2 weeks, and kids getting on the internet, looking at YouTube, whatever they're doing, they're gonna see something Deadpool, and they're gonna be and they're gonna want to be part of that cultural phenomenon. And that's the problem, is that once a thing becomes a cultural phenomenon, everybody's gonna want in on it. It feels like the new hip, fad. When I was growing up, there were certain things that just everybody went to and watched on TV. Some of it I didn't even think about whether or not it was appropriate for me. Some of it I didn't realize maybe wasn't until I looked at it later on when I was an adult. And was like, wow, I was allowed to watch that. But I mean, like, I don't know that Independence Day was necessarily the most kid appropriate thing, but everybody went and saw it. And now that it feels really tame in comparison to things that we have now. But I mean, like, everybody watched Friends. That was laden with sexual innuendo and not innuendo, just obviously clearly sexual, all over the place. Everybody watched that. So I mean, like, this is not new. I just feel like but with superhero, it's a little new. You never. It's a good thing and a bad thing. You never thought that you'd see that raunchy of a thing in costume with a character that popular. We had it with Kick-Ass, but and that also had red band trailers and stuff, and they did a good job of making sure kids knew that, or adults knew that kids weren't supposed to see that. But with Deadpool, I don't know. It's a whole different ballgame. I mean, that is a mainstream character. That is now arguably one of Marvel's top 5 or 10 most popular and recognizable characters at this point. Never thought I'd say that, but I think I can say that now.
Yeah, I think probably you're right about that. I think maybe it's just a matter of adjusting to the idea of it being this way. Like, it'll take people a while to just sort of learn that lesson. I suppose in the same way that, like, when the Tim Burton Batman movie came out, everyone kind of freaked out that it was too dark for kids, and now, like, I saw kids in a Deadpool screening. It'll just take a time for people to adjust to it, or maybe parents will just continue taking their kids to movies like this. I don't know. It's up to them, I guess.
That's overall, that's the thing I'm worried about moving forward, is that we adjust in the wrong way, where more of what ends up happening is we just all get more and more desensitized to these things, to the point where everything's okay. We don't really have any standards about it, and I don't like that. First of all, I think it messes with variety. I want to make sure that there's plenty of stuff on the pretty wholesome side. You can still be smart, and you can still tell really great stories and be pretty wholesome. And then on and then on the other side, have the super gritty, not for kids stuff. And I just want plenty of it. Of different things for different sorts of people. That's all. I mean.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
And again, I want it to be really clear what it is. For a minute before we finish, I want to talk a bit about ratings, because I hear people all the time say that the ratings board needs to be reevaluated, and I think I agree with that. I don't know that I know what to expect from a PG-13 to an R movie anymore, and I think it's odd how few G and PG things come out now.
Yeah, I think maybe most things that are like mainstream PG-13 superhero could be PG, which is the general audience, which is just the parental guidance general audience rating, right? Like, it's just maybe this won't be okay for your kids, but it probably is. You should probably watch first, but it's probably okay. Generally, general audiences, everybody can see it. PG-13 is 13 and up, obviously, and then R is 17 and up. That's the way it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, and it's just, as I've gotten older, I have noticed the standards change, where what I used to would think of as R has become pretty quickly PG-13.
Oh, interesting.
There's a lot of stuff now that you see in PG-13. Like it's just, we don't, as a culture, we just don't mind violence as much as we did even 15, 20 years ago. Some of the kinds of things that you'll see in a PG-13 movie now, and just wait, because if Suicide Squad stays PG-13, I bet you will push the boundaries, where you will see things in that and be like, I never thought I'd see that in a PG-13 movie. I mean, like,
yeah, I'm kind of surprised that movie's PG-13. I didn't realize it was PG-13.
It makes me wonder how much they had to cut out of it, because Warner said, and I think I still think that this could potentially change, because the last trailer I saw, and things might change between now and when this video is posted, I don't know, but the last trailer I saw, it hadn't been rated yet. Now, I haven't looked it up, maybe it has at this point, but I've seen some interviews where, I forget who, but people putting these movies together. I forget if it's the director of Suicide Squad or who it is, or if it was Jeff Johns, I forget. But people involved are saying that they just want it to be consistent across the board, so they're going to be PG-13 movies. The problem is if the material is just inherently too adult, I don't think that's responsible. I don't like that. I don't know. I just, something called Suicide Squad. It kind of bugs me that a lot of the kids that you'll want to take to Batman Superman, you might think to take to that just because of the rating. It should probably be R, and especially because they talked a lot about how that's pushing the boundaries of PG-13. I don't know if that's a good thing, Dan. Maybe we just need to reevaluate that and make it clearer what we're talking about. But like I've gone back to movies when I was a kid that are rated R and been like, that was really tame for R. You know, so I don't know. I think people might be kind of right about that when they say that it needs to be reevaluated. And sometimes something will get an R rated for a thing that doesn't warrant it too. Like that becomes on the flip side, that becomes a problem also, where you'll have like, you know, one scene that's kind of, you know, not nudity or anything, but just kind of sexual, and that will get it an R, but then it will be like the most super violent thing in the world, and that had nothing to do with why it was R. Like our priorities are out of whack with that.
Yeah, that's true. I think
I don't know. That kind of thing is weird.
People have been talking about reforming the ratings board for a long time, and you know, maybe now is the time that we're moving into a trend with these kind of movies. Maybe this will be the trigger.
That's all I'm saying. Tacking on to that real quick, because this was about movies before it was about anything. I also think we need, maybe, I don't know if we need a specifically structured ratings guide for comics. I don't know that that's a big deal. I would like to see more mature stickers on things that should have them.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying, there's stuff all the time that I see where I'm like, we just need to make it really clear that that's going to be really violent and people's heads are going to be... And it's not just about kids. Sometimes I want to know what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah.
I just want to throw that out there, too, because I probably sound like I'm preaching it on a soapbox. Some of it is, once again, communication. Some of it is just, I'd like to know what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, there used to be things like that, and, Marvel used to have an entire line called Marvel Knights, where you'd know that this was kind of like the
Max.
You know, like gritty... more adult section of the line and things like that, but it's sort of all amorphous now. You're right.
A lot of it is. But anyway, do you have any final thoughts, Dan?
I don't think so. I think we covered it pretty thoroughly.
All right. Well, let us know what you think about this particular topic, and just in general, how you feel about censorship we're talking mostly superhero movies, because that's getting really interesting moving forward in how, you know, different it is even than it was 10 years ago with how, you know, adult it sometimes is with superhero movies. So how do you feel about that stuff, and just the trends and where it's going? This is a really interesting year, Dan. This is going to be I can already see it now, man. It's going to be the most interesting year on record for superhero movies since 2008. This will be the next year that everybody looks back on, of the year that changed things.
Yeah, I can't wait for both Doctor Strange and X-Men Apocalypse. I'm really looking forward to both those movies. Those are probably the two I'm anticipating the most. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah,
I mean, as far as stuff that I'm excited to see, I'm with you on Apocalypse especially. But as far as I feel like a sports analyst, but as far as somebody that watches the trends and is just interested in the future and where we're going with this stuff, I can't wait to see what the world looks like after Batman v Superman.
Yeah, it's true.
Because I mean, like, I would not have expected that we would already be looking at such a changing and hard to call for the future landscape with Deadpool. We're in February, and we're already seeing a really different world that's emerging.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So anyway, thanks a lot for watching. We sure appreciate it. And if there's anything you'd like us to talk about in a future video, feel free to leave us a comment or send us a personal message on Geekvolution or Facebook. And in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan, reminding you to support your local comic store.